I'm telling you, telling you, telling you, I'm telling you it's trying times. I'm telling you, telling you, telling you, I'm telling you it's trying times. I'm telling you, telling you, telling you, I'm telling you it's trying times. I'm telling you, telling you, telling you, I'm telling you it's trying times. I throw my hands in the air like a gospel choir. Throw a song to the world for a flood that could kill the fire. Here comes, if we don't come together, we might fall apart. I'm telling you it's trying times. If we don't come together, we might fall apart. I'm telling you it's trying times. If we don't come together, we might fall apart. I'm telling you it's trying times. If we don't come together, we might fall apart. I'm telling you it's trying times.
And hello again, once again, and welcome to another Throwback Thursday listening party. We are going to be going back to 2011 tonight, and we'll be listening to our album Whitelake. Now, Whitelake was an album of firsts in a lot of ways. It was the first album that we recorded more or less completely remotely together in one place away from home. It's also the first album that we crowdfunded, so thank you to those of you who jumped on board in our very first crowdfunding campaign and were a part of the whole process from beginning to end. We're actually going to be joined by our friend Kelly Elvin a little bit later, who came all the way to Canada as part of our crowdfunding campaign and sang on the record with us. It's also, of course, the very first album on which we were joined by our good friend Bruce McCarthy on drums, who joined the band. Bruce, was it 2010, 2011?
2010. Fall.
2010. Fall of 2010. His first gig was Celtic Classic in Bethlehem, 2010. And,
First and last time I played Celtic Classic.
That's true. So far.
So far.
And it was also the first time that we worked with our man Glenn Forrester, who had been touring with us as our front of house engineer and who we'd known for many years, and who decided to take on the job of being producer and engineer for Whitelake. And Glenn's joining us today too, so say hi, Glenn.
Hello.
That is Glenn Forrester. Glenn is actually joining us from his workshop. Glenn has a soap company called Ground Soap, making organic, amazing soap. And his workshop, coincidentally, shares a wall with the studio that we recorded the bed tracks for Whitelake in. So he'll take you on a bit of a tour later on. But just first impressions, what do people kind of remember about the process of recording this album? What was it like sort of leading up to the album? And is there anything about it that we kind of approach differently from the way we did Gutter Anthems that sticks out in anybody's minds?
Oh, well, we didn't have to record any bagpipes, so that's
another first. This was the first album that Craig played trumpet on as well.
That's true. It's not strictly true. There is one track on this album with bagpipes. You remember, Craig?
Oh, yes.
You played in Basket of the Blade, which is track 2.
Yes,
That's
that's
right.
Yeah. That's right, only one. And then, yeah, okay. Sorry, I stand corrected.
The album was it was a bit of a departure for us. It was more acoustic than albums we'd done before. We just before that we played on the Cayamo cruises with a bunch of great singer-songwriters, including everybody. I don't know. But
John Prine, Richard Thompson, Lyle Lovett, John Hyatt, Jim Lauderdale, Buddy Miller, all kinds of crazy musicians.
Yeah,
So
and I think, we were inspired playing with those guys, and I think that informed the sound and the songwriting. For me, I've always been interested in doing a record sort of out in the middle of nowhere, and we're fortunate. Glenn's brother had a cottage on Whitelake. So after doing the bed tracks, that's the drums and the bass, we did all the bass at the Soul Factory. Then we moved. We packed everything up. We went to this cottage, and it was really cool place to record. Glenn's not only a great sound engineer, mix engineer, all that kind of stuff, but he's kind of a MacGyver as well. So we had to create usually when you're recording, you have an isolation booth for doing vocals and various things where you want to keep the outside sound from bleeding in through the microphone. And so what Glenn did was put one of these old cottage couches on its side and hung this big tarp over the top. There was a canoe paddle in the mix somehow, a bunch of duct tape.
Yep.
So, yeah. And you've done that before. That wasn't the first time you'd done that either.
No. For me, that was all the rustic part of the cabin was kind of where it all culminated. But really, I think a big part of where it started as well was that house that we were at in Georgia, where you guys started pre-production. For me, that was kind of what really fed that vibe into the record. It was right after we got home from the cruise, or we got back on land from the cruise, and we landed in this beautiful house in the mountains in Georgia, and these guys just sort of hung out and played music, looking out over the woods for days and days on end. It was just an amazing setting, all logs and stone, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to be invited to the home of the parents of Rebecca and Megan Lovell of the band Larkin Poe, who we made friends with when we were on the Cayamo cruise. And as Glenn says, in Calhoun, Georgia, we went out there and we hung out in an amazing place. And they had a beautiful grand piano in their main room, and we basically just kind of hung out around the piano, and we all jammed for 2 days and drank a bunch of wine and wrote a bunch of music. And yeah, it was pretty magical. It was really, really cool. So I don't remember whether or not this first song is one that we worked on there in Calhoun or not. But it's kind of an interesting song because it comes in two pieces. It's called Headlights 1 and 2. And the two parts do share a couple of common melodic themes, but they're very different musically. Does anybody kind of remember? I know that Trevor, you had written the majority of Headlights 1. At least, I don't know if you were done with the lyrics yet, but at least musically, the idea was all kind of there. And then I think you had the idea that you wanted it to pick up and go into something else. And we tried a couple of different things. And the only thing I can take credit for is that I remembered a melody that Craig had written years before, probably when we were working on aerials or something, for some song that he had brought to the band, and I always thought it was a really cool melody. And so I suggested, hey, let's resurrect that melody that Craig wrote, and that became Headlights 2. And then
I remember that as well. Yeah, it was a song. What was it called? The Highlands.
Yeah, it was some kind of Highland themed thing. I was just thinking of once again of Highland imagery, but yeah, it was kind of corny and it wasn't really going to work. But I remember Brian saying, I remember every melody that you've ever brought to the band. And yeah, that's where it came from. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, so then I think, Trevor, you finished off the lyrics, and at some point the decision was made that you would sing the first one, I would sing the second one, and then we tied both of them together with that big soaring harmony part that's in kind of both pieces. Our buddy Mike Olson joined us once again for the second album in a row, and not for the last time, playing cello on this record, and played some really cool cello parts in here. And I think this song, Craig, is there trumpet in this song on the record? I don't even remember.
Oh yeah, that. Did I do that? No, I don't think it is on the
No,
record.
I think you just did it live.
No,
Well,
yeah, it became a live thing. Yeah.
The cello plays it right on the record. Okay.
Yeah. So I always thought this turned out really cool. Trevor, I think you played the banjo part on it. Bruce, this isn't one of the ones that you played that huge kick drum for, is it?
No, I think I only actually played that as a kick drum, maybe in Devil's Son.
Okay.
But I did use it a couple times just as kind of a thunderous sort of sound effect. But
okay. I remember it was really fun for me watching you, Bruce, because it was our first time in the studio with you, be creative with the kinds of things that you use. So we'll get into that a little bit, but there was like saw blades on cymbal stands, and there was like all kinds of chains and massive drums and crazy things that we ended up getting used all over the record. So we'll talk about those as they come. You just have to remind me when they were so that we actually get into them.
Sure.
So if no one's got anything else specific about this song, we'll get into some music. This is track 1 on Whitelake, and it's called Headlights 1 and 2.
After all, we're back again to navigate the pavement. See, don't turn on your radio, you'll block out the music. Pass like fingerprints, complex hearts but hard to see. We walk this corn maze in reverse to avoid the exits. This is the start of a night on wheels. Count the headlight stars. Our scars are the memories of all we've been. Street corners, alleys, and bars. Sometimes I think we're drowning in the pond of our youth. And it's one more time around again. All or nothing, beginning or end as the night closes in. One more shot to make love bleed. One more kick at it, last of dreams as the night closes in. be shutting our eyes. Our heads in the city, our hearts in the hills, following footprints and fires. Maybe we won't be chosen, maybe we're on our own. And it's one more time around again, all or nothing, beginning or end as the night closes in. And it's one more shot to make love bleed, one more kick at a glass of dreams as the night closes in. And we know we can't slow down, we know that we can't, no, we can never slow down. Slow down, slow down, slow down.
That was Headlights 1 and 2 on our album Whitelake from 2011. We're going to move into track 2 here, which is the only song on Whitelake that features the bagpipes. And they're mostly just in through the choruses, I think, and they're kind of almost like a synth part. But they are in there. They are in there. This song, I wrote this song. I wrote parts of it and parts of the lyrics pretty much the day we got off of the Cayamo ship in 2011. And I remember that we were touring after we got off the ship, and we were on our way up to Jam and Java in Vienna, Virginia. And I had this little tiny keyboard, which had been given to us by, maybe it was our friend Ed Griffin. Trev, do you remember who gave us that? No, it was our friend Bob Clary in Utica, New York, or Syracuse, New York. I don't remember where you live, Bob. I'm sorry. Had given us a box of things at the beginning of this tour, and one of the things was a little tiny MIDI keyboard. And so I sat in the back of the van with my laptop, and I demoed pretty much this whole song with no vocals by the time we got to Jam and Java, and then I played it for these guys. Bruce, there's some really kind of unusual percussive sounds on this track in particular, which you did kind of replicate when we played it live, but can you give us a bit more sort of background on your idea there?
I think what I did was, it was either my idea or someone else's, I don't really remember, but somehow the thought came to me to have sort of like a metallic, almost like an industrial sound of sorts, either in place of the regular snare drum backbeats or, in addition to. And one of the days we had some time off in Cornwall, I was walking around town, and I think I ended up in a Value Village or something akin to like a Salvation Army thrift store. And I was looking around at random junk, and this was one of the things I found.
Oh, wow.
To see that.
Yeah,
It's like a Coca-Cola metal serving tray, and you probably can't tell, but it's been beaten up pretty good. So, that's something I don't really do anymore. But I used to just dive into thrift stores and pick things up and start tapping them and making a scene in the middle of the store to try and find something that I thought might sound cool that I could use at a later date. But anyway, I found this that day, and then we tried it on the track, and it had kind of, sort of a cool metallic industrial sound. I just laid it on the snare drum and started whacking it. And so that's through a lot of this song, I guess, or at least the choruses maybe in the outro. And I had another shaker thing, a kashishi. I could grab one of those too, but and then other than that, it was just sort of like bass drum stuff, and I think a regular kind of snare drum came in. But yeah, it's fun to try unconventional percussion sounds when you can, to add sort of a different texture or flavor to things.
Yeah, well, I always thought that it turned out really well. It's a really unusual sounding song. And as I say, it was just fun to be in the studio with you during the bed track there in Cornwall, because it seemed like just about every track there was some found object being used in a musical way that would be not sort of a standard part of a drum kit. And it really did add a lot of really cool flavors to some of the songs.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember sort of what the genesis for some of those ideas were, but you guys were mentioning earlier being in Georgia, and when we were working out some of those things at the Levels house, I obviously wasn't playing a drum set. I think I had a djembe or a cajon or something, and then I had these little shakers and toys and stuff, and I was already kind of using those, and this is one of the songs that we kind of fleshed out there.
That's right.
Devil Sun was another one. So they had a bit of when some of the songs were written or workshopped between us as a band, they had some of these kind of more percussion-y elements, I guess. Maybe just by the nature that I wasn't actually sitting on a drum set. And that sort of, I think, carried through into actually when it came time to record the album. But yeah, it's fun. It's nice to have, well, we were also coming off the Cayamo cruise, like we said, and that had definitely more of an Americana kind of bent to it. So I think all of our ears had been kind of turned a little bit in that direction, a little bit away from a rock band and more towards something a little bit more acoustic or bluegrassy or
I think the word organic was thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
When we were working on this record.
The other tone that gets me in this song was that the really beefy bass tone of that Bosendorfer piano.
That's right.
That we went and recorded, and I found it really fit with that snare tone really great. It was this, giant grand piano. We were out in the middle of nowhere, Brian and I, on this crazy windy day. It was just this guy that I knew. He's our local piano tuner. And he happens to have, a 99 key Bosendorfer or something like that?
Yeah, well, it has like an extra octave anyway. So it might be, it might be 100 keys.
Yeah, and this thing, it just, the tone in the low end is so aggressive, and it felt perfect in this song, I found. And the day we were recording it, not to mention, it really suited that sort of, that vibe as well. I found, there were sticks blowing around outside off the trees, and it was just a spooky day. I think the power even went out at one point.
It did. I remember it was, we had done all the, so for people who don't know, a Bosendorfer piano, it's a regular grand piano. It's some Bosendorfers. This one I think actually had belonged to or was played by jazz great Oscar Peterson.
That's right. It was his piano. That's right.
But they have an extra octave in the bass end, which is the color of the keys is reversed. It's where the white keys are usually white, they're black, and vice versa. And you generally don't play those low notes. They're just there so that the strings that are running for those keys resonate sympathetically in the harmonics with all the other notes as you're playing them. So it's just this extra big level of beefy harmonics. And yeah, it's like a totally different beast when you're hitting those low keys. So pretty much the whole song, I'm just hammering octaves with my left hand down low, and it really kind of comes through. But you're right, I'd actually forgotten, Glenn. We had done, I think, everything that we knew we wanted to do on piano. And we were really kind of freaked out because it was storming and it was crazy windy outside, and we were just locked in this garage. And I think I told you, like, pull up the song Flood. I just want to try something on piano before we leave here, because this is our only chance to use a real piano. And I did one take, and you hit save, and the power went out.
Yeah, and I remember it was a magical take too. I just remember thinking, and I don't even remember if I had hit saved or if it just that the auto save was on. Because the power went out, and I remember leaving there not sure if we had it or not.
Right. So crazy.
Yeah.
But we did have it. It is the
piano,
yes. The little piano.
And that's what you hear on Flood, that piano.
Yeah. So we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I'm going to jump into the song here so people can hear some music. This one is track 2. This is called The Basket or the Blade.
I am lighting You are felling trees, composing melodies that I will never sing. When the autumn comes, we will build our drums and find a place to play. Basket or the blade, shame and all charade, are you too strong to see that I am so alone, still clinging to my throne until they come for me? Will you kiss my hair as they drag me to the square, or will you run away? Tell me, are you the basket or the blade? Am I a soldier returning to parade, or will you catch me and hold me while the cheers and echoes fade? Will you be the basket or the blade? Oh, the sirens. I've never been in front of such a crowd. Teeth and gleaming eyes, don't they realize they're so insanely loud? Here underneath their blade, I wonder if you'll stay or if you'll run away. Tell me, are you the basket or the blade? Am I a soldier returning to parade, or will you catch me and hold me while the cheers and echoes fade? Will you be the basket or the razor edge, dividing me in two if I should lose my head? Would I be losing you, or will you shelter me from the fire and hide me in your shade? The basket or the blade? Oh, the silence. Oh, the silence. Oh, the silence. Awaken every hour. Oh, the silence. Oh, the silence. Oh, the silence. Awaken every hour. I can hear them now.
That was track 2, The Basket or the Blade. And we moved from there into one of the more kind of straight acoustic folk kind of songs on the record. And this one's called Devil's Son, which was written by Trevor and which remains to this day one of my favorite songs Trevor's ever written. There's kind of a sad story behind the inspiration for the song, and I'm going to get the details wrong, so I'll let Trevor fill you in a little bit on that.
I'll get the details wrong.
Okay.
Bernie Madoff, I'm sure everybody knows, was a Ponzi scheme guy, and his son, Mark Madoff, killed himself in New York City sometime afterwards, overcome with, by the emotions surrounding it all. I'm not sure if he was wrapped up in the lawsuit in some way too, or involved in that type of stuff. But anyway.
Isn't he the guy he blew the whistle on his dad, I think?
Oh, that is exactly right. Yes, that is true. I'm not sure. I think there was something happening about I guess he had killed himself around that time. And this was just a kind of a pretty little bluegrass inspired track. And for some reason, that story kind of, I don't know, it sort of came together with the melody lyrically.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly how that happened, but
It was pretty quick after we came off Cayamo too, because this is one of the ones that we played through a lot at the Lovell House in Calhoun.
Right.
And I remember we have somewhere a recording of us playing it, and Rebecca was playing a banjo part, and so you wound up playing a banjo on the final recording.
That's right. We were just talking about this banjo. This was Craig brought the banjo to the studio. We always bring a few different instruments, and Craig had this banjo that he bought from his father-in-law for $75, I think. Wasn't that? Or you
Bargain.
for a case of beer or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it was. He got ripped up. Anyway, it was it was nice. I was like the banjo. Brian and I over the course of a few albums have found different ways to stick a banjo in there, but yeah, it's always fun. And this one, is that the one?
Wasn't that good? Yeah, it's a Velma.
Velma. Wow.
A Velma, yeah.
Oh my God. Glenn, I remember, so there was periods of time where after the beds were recorded, the drums and bass were recorded, it was Trevor and Craig and myself and you that went up to the cottage to continue working on the record. And there was a period of time where it was just the two of us, just you and me, because I had a lot of overdubs to do and a lot of different songs and vocals and things. And so Trevor had gone home briefly, and I don't think Craig was there either for some reason. I guess, Craig, you had left for a little while, or maybe you were finished all your parts by that point. But
I was gone for a bit, and I came back up. I remember this because I got a $180 speeding ticket.
But I remember I felt a lot of pressure personally trying to finish this song up because everyone else was done their parts, and so it was basically down to me to put whatever I felt needed to go onto this song. And I thought it was such a great song. And we recorded fiddle parts, and we tried a couple of different things. I think I tried playing the accordion. I had in my head that we were going to do accordion on this song.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to play accordion, so that was not a great idea.
I sort of feel like we worked on it almost daily. We would revisit it and try something new because it had been not really a thorn in our side, but we kept leaving it because we both sort of felt like it was going to be this really great song. And if we could nail that musical theme, then it would just tie the whole thing together. And the sentiment of it was so powerful that, it had to have that amount of power in the musical theme as well. And I just remember the one day, I can't even remember what it was, but I had no stress about it for whatever reason, but maybe it was just expecting that one day it will just land and there it will be. And that's actually what happened. I guess one day you tried the right instrument and it was just, we looked at each other and there it was.
And that right instrument turned out to be Trevor's octave mandolin, which he left up at the cottage.
I had just come from Ottawa and purchased that instrument at the Ottawa Folklore Center. Just looking for something unusual, and brought that to the studio. But yeah, for anyone who hasn't seen it before, it's just basically twice the scale of a regular mandolin.
And it was a bitch to keep in tune, and I'm not a great mandolin player to begin with, but thankfully that theme that kind of happens off the top and throughout the song wasn't too difficult to play, and somehow it wound up kind of being the glue that kind of brought a groove, like a sort of percussive sound underneath that melody. And I just remember the feeling of relief when I finished playing the part and Glenn and I pulled it up on the speakers and listened to it, and it was there, and it felt like it finally had that, whatever that emotion was that we'd been kind of chasing. And then it was just like, I don't know, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off because we really wanted to get this one right.
Yeah, I just felt like we had done it. I think, it did feel just, there was no doubt about it. That was the thing. And I think that it was that percussive aspect of it that kind of grounded that whole theme that felt really good. It felt like it was three-dimensional all of a sudden.
Yeah. So this is, as I said, still one of my favorite songs Trevor's written. This is called Devil's Son.
I'll die alone. So I sang and I sang and I sang. I called it out, my Father's name. The boys in blue, they came. But now I feel so ashamed. Quiet now, the baby sleeps. Change his name so he won't be down, down, down on my own. Come on, hang the devil's son. I'll die alone. So I sang and I sang and I sang. I called it out, my Father's name. The boys in blue, they came. But now I feel so, but now I feel so ashamed. Quiet now, the baby sleeps.
That was Devil's Son, and we will continue on to track 4, which is a song that I wrote, which took me a very long time to write. I think I had versions of this song or snippets of this song written for 2 or 3 years before we got to recording this album, and it's called Whistleblower. This is unusual in that a large part of the song is in 5/4 time. We don't have a lot of songs in 5/4 time, but at least all the verses. Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the verses of this song are in 5/4. I think there's a bridge that's kind of in 6.
I think that's right. Yep. I'm just remembering
Oh,
now hearing you say that. But.
Yeah, the choruses are 5/4 too. I think most of the song is in 5. This one, I remember this being a bit of a beast for me to write lyrics for because I had sort of a basic structure, a basic idea of what I wanted the song to be about, and it kept on feeling like a Bono U2 like really preachy kind of song where it was all about how many people had died in conflicts around the world. And I'm trying to remember I had a couple of lyrics written, and for whatever reason, sometimes when you're writing a song, this happens where you have 1 or 2 lines that you fixate on, and then you obsess about trying to fill in a song around those 1 or 2 lines. And I remember, Glenn, it was kind of your job to crack the whip on me whenever somebody else was recording something to go work on the Whistleblower lyrics, because eventually I was going to have to sing the song, and there's going to be, a whole thing involved with that and maybe backup vocals and everything else. So we had to get the lyrics done. What was it like from your perspective? Because it must have been really frustrating.
Well, no, I mean, I think, I understood too that we had this really great track. It was a really cool, like the sound of it was really great and the vibe was really cool. And for me, like all I did with you was flip the paradigm on you. You were trying to write it in the third person and I just said, why don't you try to write it in first person? And there it was. It was easier to write that way,
Yeah.
And that was it. That's what led you to.
It went from being like, from the perspective of, as you say, yeah, like I was writing this sort of overarching, like my grand thoughts on child soldiers
in third person,
and
yeah.
stuff. And yeah, you suggested that I personalize it and sort of bring it from the universal down into the personal. And as soon as I did that, like I had been reading about this charity called Falling Whistles, just started by a guy who had lived over in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and had worked with rehabilitating former child soldiers. And the symbol of this charity was this whistle. And the story as he told it was that some of these warlords, some of these guys in the jungle, they would recruit all these child soldiers, and the ones who were too small to carry a gun, they would make them run out ahead during an attack, during a blitz of some kind, and blow these whistles basically to draw fire so that their side could then attack while the other side was reloading. And this was a story that he was told by a child soldier who he was rehabilitating. And so he made these whistles, and it's fallingwhistles.com. I think the website's still out there. And he sold them sort of to try and help raise awareness. And I had one of these whistles. And in the end, we wound up actually recording the whistle in the song, and I wrote it from the first person perspective of someone returning home after living a life of violence and trying to sort of see the way that their life had changed and the world around them had changed. So, and
heavy lyrics on this record.
They really are, yeah.
Yeah,
we're just getting started too.
Haven't got to Of a Murder yet.
Yeah, or The Flood. Craig, you played this whistle live when we played this song the few times that we played it live.
Yeah, I practiced really hard. I got my grade 8 and grade 2 theory in the instrument. I shouldn't be making fun about it. It was a pretty serious song, but yeah.
Hey man, anything we can do to lighten the mood when we're talking about like child soldiers. Bruce, percussively, you did something in this track on your snare drum that I had never heard a drummer do before, and you've done it for a couple of songs sort of in the years since, but it was the first time I'd ever seen. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Sure. It's not the easiest thing to explain, I guess. But basically, I'm sort of playing a rim shot, so I'm catching, the edge of the drum head and the rim of the drum together, and it makes a certain kind of sound with one hand, and then I'm kind of dampening it with the other hand. So it almost creates sort of a gated type of effect. It's just something I stole from another drummer that I thought sounded really cool, and it gives it a bit of a gated effect, or almost like a bit of a programmed sort of feeling. It's kind of an interesting way of playing maybe a smaller groove in a verse or something, but doing it in a more unconventional way. Or
for people who have never played drums or never sort of been around drums, you might not realize that when you hit a snare drum, there is a decay. It's not like a really short muffled sound. There's kind of a longer ring. And so what Bruce was doing was muting that ring with his other hand by just pressing it down on the skin of the drum. And so
right. So when I say gated, I should have maybe clarified that. Like in audio, there's a thing called a gate, which is like, the gate of a fence or going into someone's yard. If you want sound to come out, you open the gate. And if you want to cut off the sound, you close the gate. It's a way of sometimes dealing with extra noise that might be going on, or things ringing out, like Brian's saying, that maybe you don't want to have ringing out. But people also sometimes use these gates as a way of creating an effect, because depending on how you might set an actual audio gate, you can set it to where it sounds natural, like the sound just decays, or you can set it another way to where it's kind of cutting off the sound more aggressively. And sometimes that's a really cool or interesting sound. And this is kind of a way of creating sort of a similar effect, but doing it kind of acoustically with your hands.
Very cool. Well, I like the song, and it's one that it's hard for us to pull off live these days because I wrote the entire guitar part in DADGAD tuning, I think, and Trevor played his octave mandolin, which we briefly had with us live. And so the two of us would play those two instruments, a second guitar that we don't have on the road anymore, and an octave mandolin, which we also don't have on the road anymore. But maybe one day we'll figure out a way of making it work with the instruments that we currently tour with, because I think it's kind of a pretty song. This is called Whistleblower.
Spring is coming on. Yesterday is smoke and steam and sand. All those demons hold me where I stand. This road could lead me back where I began. If I only knew the way. Are they waiting by the door? Do they wonder where I've gone? Is it my home anymore? Or will I be moving on? I have been away for way too long. I remember whispered words and names, men in fields and everything in flames. Our mothers feared the men that we became, but their sons were on the rise. Are they waiting by the door? Do they wonder where I've gone? Is it my home anymore? Or will I be moving on? I'm a million miles away, and it's hard to see beyond all the chaos and decay to the place where I belong. I've been away for way too long. Before these harsh realities, violence seems so far away. Our entire world was water and shade. Now we're paying for mistakes our fathers made. Are they waiting by the door? Do they wonder where I've gone? Is it my home anymore? Or will I be moving on? I'm a million miles away, and it's hard to see beyond all the chaos and decay to the place where I belong. I've been away for way too long.
That was Whistleblower. We're about halfway through the album now, and we come to the quietest, folkiest little ballad on the record, a song that I wrote called The Flood. And The Flood was written, Trevor and Craig and myself were booked to do a songwriters seminar at the Real School of Music, just outside of Boston. And Trevor, I think, came up with the idea that in order to do this thing, there had been a flood while we were there in Boston, while we were staying for a few days leading up to this. And Trevor had the idea on the day of the seminar that he and myself and Craig would all sequester ourselves away, and all three of us would write in its entirety a song about our experience in the flood, not play them for each other, and then debut them on stage in front of the group of kids who were coming to see us. And
this wasn't just a flood we read about in the newspaper. We were staying at a friend's house in the basement, and when we woke up in the morning, the basement was flooded. We were on air mattresses. Air mattresses weren't quite floating yet, but we had to strip out all the rugs, all the carpeting, and everything like that. So we had a first-hand account of this flooding. Yeah.
And it was really cool. The three songs they could not have been more different from one another, I don't think. And it was cool that evening to sort of hear the songs that each of us had been inspired to write. And we decided to put the song that I wrote on this record that it seemed to kind of make sense as a song for this record. Now, there's something else about this song. The day that I recorded the vocals for this, I decided that I was, like, right after I recorded the vocals for this, I decided I was going to go out into the canoe on the lake and finish working on the lyrics for Whistleblower, among other songs. And I had an experience, which I've told the story of on stage many times, but the only other person who was at the cottage with me when this happened was Glenn. And he's never had the opportunity to tell the story from his perspective, so I'm going to let him do that.
I guess Brian's told the story many times from stage, and everyone gets his side of it. But from my perspective, he had recorded the vocal track and was, I think you were going out into the canoe to write some other lyrics for some other songs or something like that. And so, he got together his jacket and his books and maybe your notepad and stuff like that, and you were going to head out into the canoe. And so I saw him off and got him started and everything. And with the cottage is in a bay, so it's maybe half a mile across the bay. And there, it seemed like a calm day. I think it was in the late afternoon or evening, and I was doing some more work. So I got, down to, I guess I was probably just cleaning up the vocal tracks and getting things organized. And I don't know how much time went by, but I remember after a while poking my head up and thinking, I wonder where Brian is. I haven't seen him in a while. And so I looked out on the, down the lake, and I couldn't see him anymore. And I thought, okay, well, maybe, he's coming around the shore or something like that. So I got my head stuck in the computer again and got to work. And then I poked my head up again, and I don't know how much time had passed, but I remember thinking to myself, I think I should be worried at this point. Like, I don't know where he is. It seemed like it had been quite a while. And I went outside and I went down to the lake, and I couldn't see you. And then I came back up. I think I was coming up the hill or something like that. And you had come in the cottage from the front, and you were soaked, like completely soaked, frozen to death. You were there. I think your pants were actually frozen to you. Like,
yeah, they were slick.
And he was basically saying to me, like, I couldn't figure out, obviously I knew at that point that he had fallen, and there was no canoe. I don't know where the canoe was. And he had come in the front of the cottage, which was via the road. So he had walked all the way around from the other side of the bay, which was probably a mile and a half in the freezing cold. I think it was in the evening at this point, so it was getting quite cold out. And I just remember you wanting to get in the shower so badly. You just needed to warm up, and you were hypothermic at that point. So you spent about probably 45 minutes in the shower after that. And then you finally ended up getting the story of what had happened. And you had seen some sort of animal in the woods. And here's the thing that got me, was that you had the presence of mind to not just leave the canoe where it was. He had fallen, the wind had picked up, apparently. This was the story. And he had, shifted in one way or another, and the canoe had flipped, and you were about 40 feet from shore, from what I gathered. And he had the presence of mind to actually pull the canoe with him while he was swimming all the way into the shore. Instead of just leaving the thing there in the freezing cold and going and saving yourself, you actually pulled the canoe up onto shore.
It's a good thing I did, because I was wearing like a leather jacket and boots because it was March, and I had to stop 2 or 3 times on my way to shore to rest, because I was, as you say, I was basically hypothermic, and I was hyperventilating, and I had the canoe to grab onto and kind of rest for a second and then keep on going. And I'm not a super strong swimmer, and if I hadn't had the canoe with me, you guys might have been, telling the the 9 years later story of how Brian died on Whitelake after recording The Flood.
Yeah, I think that you and I didn't really discuss it much afterwards, but it sunk into both of us pretty quickly that it was a very close call because the water was really cold, like maybe a couple of degrees above freezing. The ice had just been out. It just had left the lake, and it was a cold period of time. It wasn't warm outside either. Like you were in the canoe with a jacket on, so it was even cold outside.
Yeah, it was not my most shining moment, but that was the greatest shower I have ever taken in my entire life. Well, I did survive, if anybody's on the edge of their seat, and we went on to mix this song, and this is another one. This one probably features our friend Mike Olson on cello most prominently on the record, and he just played an incredible part in the cello, and it kind of gives me goosebumps whenever I hear it. So this one is called The Flood.
By 2 p.m. the rain is gone, clear and cold above. Water slowly fills the shadows on the lawn and never makes a sound. Leave it all behind you and head for higher ground. All these years of commitments and careers, we're all up to our ears in fear and doubt, in water flowing down and out, down and out. We all try to drown it out, and stay dry. We all try. Quietly the valley fills with nothing but a sigh. They shake their heads from high up on the hill where everything is dry. No need to build a boat under sympathetic skies. So we fight to be warm and watertight. It's not the sunshine blinding us, it's just the fear of finding that we're down and out, down and out. We all try to drown it out, and stay dry. We all try. And maybe there's still time. Maybe we should find a tree to climb. But it's easy not to be afraid and simply close your eyes and just watch the water rise. We all try to stay dry.
That was The Flood from 2011's Whitelake. Thanks everybody for joining us here tonight. We're having a great time going through this album. Remember, if you feel like throwing a few coins in the tip jar, you can go to enterthehaggis.com/tip jar. My cat is yelling at me in the background, and I'm not entirely sure why. But we're going to move on to one of the more kind of straight-ahead rock songs that we've ever recorded. And this is kind of a crowd favorite. It shows. It's called Getaway Car, and it's one that Trevor wrote. We recorded, I think I played my Nord keyboard sort of on like a Rhodes or a Wurlitzer kind of sound on the album. But it's definitely got a lot of big guitars. And I know, Trevor, I think you played the orange indie guitar that I have on the wall behind me here. I don't know how visible it is, but it's right back there over my shoulder. So the reason that we wound up playing indie guitars on this record is that the studio that we did the bed tracks at in Cornwall was also the headquarters of Indie Guitar Company International, because the guy who owned the place also owned the rights, the distribution rights for indie guitars. And this beautiful orange hollow body was on the wall, and we pulled it down, and we actually wound up playing it a lot on the record, and then I wound up just buying it from him because we enjoyed it so much. Glenn happens to be, his workshop, as we mentioned earlier, shares a wall with the studio that we recorded the bed tracks for this record in. So, Glenn, if you don't mind, if you're mobile, you could actually take people on a slight tour here.
Yeah, well, we basically discovered when I got here that this was actually where we did the bed tracks. I couldn't, it was sort of, it had slipped my mind at the time. But I'm just coming in the back way here because I've discovered that I can actually go through here. So this was the hallway behind it, behind the live room. This is the live room here. It had these same green walls when we recorded here, I think. But now it's filled with mannequins and other strange oddities. But this was where all the drums were recorded for Whitelake, in this room. And then out here would be the control room. I don't know how much we're going to be able to see here, but I don't think.
This is the part where Glenn sets off the security system and the cops show up and drag him away on camera.
Oh, the control room is even open.
All right.
Well, we also did.
Look at this. The control room's still here.
Huh.
There's no equipment, but no, I haven't been in this part of the building for a long time, so this is.
Is that still soundproofing on the walls?
Yeah, the soundproofing's all still here. The big TV's still here. Everything is as it was, just with no equipment.
That's crazy.
Pretty cool.
We didn't.
I haven't been up. I don't think I've been in this room since like 10 years ago when we made that record.
Yeah.
So there's no window in the
building every day.
So it's a monitor. It's a video monitor feed from the recording room. Is that right?
I don't know. Well, at the time, it wasn't. At the time, that was just, I think, what we were looking at Pro Tools on.
Yeah, there was no window though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there was. Yeah, there's no window here to the sound room. I can't remember how we were doing that. Maybe we were just doing it blind.
Yeah, we're just talking about. I just remembered that we did about 4 or 5 days of pre-production in that room.
That's right.
Before we actually started recording.
That's right. I forgot about that. Crazy. Well, this orange guitar would have been hanging on the wall just outside of that control room out in the, sort of the main lobby. And we fell in love with it, and I bought it, and we toured with it for quite a while. It's pretty cool. It's amazing that we didn't plan this at all. I had no idea that Glenn was going to be in the same building we recorded Whitelake in.
Yeah, that's funny. It didn't occur to me until I first sat down and realized that, wait a sec, on the other side of the wall is where we did the bed tracks.
That's so crazy.
And now I can still get through.
Well, this song, I guess we'll just kind of get into it. One thing that people who have seen us play live many times will notice, first of all, is that there's a lot less electric guitar in the song, because I play electric guitar live, ungodly loud whenever Glenn lets me do it. And on the record, there's, I think, just sort of the one guitar track and then some acoustic stuff. But there's also the recorded version of the song is actually shorter than the live version. There's we extended the outro for live, and we play it twice as long every time we play it live. So if you're singing along at home, you might very well be caught belting out the second half of the outro all by yourself, because we're going to stop. So this one is called Getaway Car.
last resort, hidden under vines and autumn leaves, waiting there for you to come when it was just too hard. Sit there with your hands upon the wheel. You can run. The getaway car could take you there, any place you need. Around the corner, up into the sky. Somewhere on this highway, you forgot that you could dream, forgot that you could break the speed of life. You can run, but you won't get far. Now you locked your keys in the getaway car. Drawn into the high-speed chase, fight for bottom line. Sirens push the pedal to the floor. The getaway car is rusty, but you know that it can shine. Fill her up again and let it roar. You can run, but you won't get far. Now you locked your keys in the getaway car. You can run, but you won't get far. Now you locked your keys in the getaway car. Everyone forgets about this place. We all need a little time and space. You can run, but you won't get far. You can run, but you won't get far. Now you locked your keys in the getaway car. You can run, but you won't get far. Now you locked your keys in the getaway car. You can run. You can run.
That was Getaway Car, and we're going to move from there on to the next track, which is track 7, which has a very unusual name, a name which is a word which we invented for the occasion. The track is called Semoustophy, spelled P-S-E-U-M-O-U-S-T-O-P-H-Y. Craig, can you define Semoustophy for us?
I could. I think we even tried to get it in the Urban Dictionary, but I'm not 100% sure if it ever made it. But it just comes from some mouths to feed. And you were the one, Brian, who said, yeah, we should, spell it like this and make that the title.
Well, because I don't think I knew what you were saying when you sang the first line of the song, which is, "Hey man, you're killing me. I got some mouths to feed."
Yeah.
All I heard was, "Hey man, you're killing me. I've got some mouths to feed," and I thought it was like a disease.
I think it is a disease. Well, when I tried to get it in the Urban Dictionary, I don't know who's running that thing, but I put the definition of the word. I put samostophy, and then for the description or the definition, the state of being depended upon. As a description. Anyway, yeah. If you want to talk about anything else about it, I have a little bit more about the lyrics, but I can say that.
No, go right ahead. I didn't contribute. I mean, I played a fiddle solo in this song, and I wound up singing the choruses, but I wasn't very much a part of writing this. That was mostly you and Trevor.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Craig and I for a couple of years before we used to jam on this. Craig had his harmonica, and just sitting in the green room or whatnot, I'd play that little riff that was in 6/4, I think. And I remember specifically down in West Palm Beach, north of Miami. There, we were there for a few days, staying in a little apartment, and we played this like cocktail bar. Remember that place?
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember jamming on that riff there?
Yeah, I remember jamming on it, and we would always do it, and then we would always laugh afterward. Like every time, and they get there.
Kind of a bouncy, feel-good thing. Yeah.
This used to be called The Other Ones. This used to be called The Other Ones, right?
That's right. Yeah, Trevor had lyrics for it, and called it The Other Ones, and I wasn't quite sure what the song was about, but
it wasn't either. I think that's why eventually I just said, you had some interest in working on it, so I just said, I was never really happy with what I'd done lyrically, so I thought it was cool that you were interested in writing.
Yeah. The other working title for this was Rat Traps, but I don't remember why.
Right, yeah.
So you said you had some more background on the lyrics for this song.
Yeah, well, while we were recording with Glenn, there was this politician who dropped in, and he was somehow campaigning for his election. He was visiting different businesses and people that he knew, and he came in and he had a carton of Tim Hortons coffee, and he had a couple of boxes of donuts. And he said, "Oh, hello, I'm so-and-so. I'm the candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party. I'm doing this, I'm doing that." And so afterward, when we got to the cottage, I started thinking, what could this song be about? Because we still didn't really know what the song was about. And I thought, well, it kind of, this Just Like the Other Ones and whatever, it kind of sounded, kind of like the type of opinion that people have about politicians in general. So I was kind of looking at it from the viewpoint of the cynical electorate. And that's kind of where most of my lyrics came from. And they happened to work with what Trevor had written beforehand. And I don't know, it wasn't for the chorus. It was mainly for the verses.
Well, it's kind of a cool song. It's sort of an unusual swing kind of tune with a kind of a heavier interlude in the middle, which I always thought was pretty cool and pretty heavy. And it's one of the shorter ones on the record, actually. This is called Semestophy.
Hey we believe in being just like the other ones. Yeah, we're just like the other ones.
That was Semestophy, and from there we move on to a song that that Trevor and I wrote. Well, Trevor wrote pretty much all of it. But I remember the two of us working on this song. We lived together at a pretty small basement apartment in the South Kingsway in Toronto, and it was it's a song called "Follow," which we kind of fought with for a while because the original idea for this song was a totally different feel.
And when you say fought with it for a while, we worked on Gasoline together in the same apartment.
Yeah.
And that album came out in 2004, and the same album came out in, what was it, 2011? Sorry.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so quite a while.
I remember that
it was just a goof that Bruce was doing on it that made us change the feel completely.
Yeah.
Sometimes Bruce will do wacky drum stuff that's totally inappropriate. And then for whatever reason, that was the impetus. It was the catalyst for,
It was one of the last songs that we were working on in the pre-production for this record. And Trev, give us a taste of the feel of the song, because we were playing it was almost more like a Down with the Ship or something. And I think we were just all so bored by it, the way that we were playing it for some reason. It just never got exciting.
Yep.
Time flies, count for all the driven circles on days by the window.
Yeah, so that kind of a feel, which is, it's nice, it's pretty. And that's the way that I remember us working on it years before. And then, yeah, as you say, I think we probably played it to death about 50 times. And then Bruce just started playing a completely different drum feel underneath it. And I think I was playing your Telecaster, and I started doing that little guitar part over top of what Bruce was playing, because it struck me as this kind of South African kind of feel. And then Mark came in with a totally badass bass part, and all of a sudden the song had legs, and it was really, really cool. Mark, what was the inspiration for you on the bass part?
Well, first off, hey everybody. I've been kind of sitting back listening to the good old stories. I'm still in a lobster coma from dinner tonight, but it's been fun listening back to all these stories. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the cottage part of the recording, so the bed tracks were my part of the contribution for the record. But this was a fun song. I mean, we always tend, a lot of times when we're stuck on what to do with a song, we tend to go Latin or African or whatever. We've done that a lot. And sometimes it works, and sometimes afterwards we're like, But anyway, this one was one that worked. And I mean, yeah, Bruce came up with that really cool part. You started doing that South African noodly guitar thing, and I just tried to come up with something that was going to work with that. And I thought the parts intertwined pretty cool in the long run. So it's a fun one. We played it live for quite a while, and it fell off. But it was a fun one to play.
For the longest time, it was the only song that I played electric guitar on live. So I would have to take Trevor's guitar in order to play this song. And he would play acoustic, and I would play his electric guitar in the days before I had my own electric on the road. But it's cool. And there's a lot of percussion stuff too, right, Bruce?
Yeah, I haven't heard these songs in so long. I'm just trying to remember. And I didn't remember that until you just asked me. But yeah, I think there's like some cowbell stuff, shakere, which is like a gourd with beads. Mine's made out of fiberglass, but once upon a time it would have been an actual hollowed out gourd, which is pretty cool. And some kishishis, which are shakers that you play in a funny manner, like a highway used car lot blow up doll kind of motion, like this.
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of a cheerful song, the way that it turned out, which is nice, because it kind of had a bit of a melancholy flair to it when we were playing it in its original kind of slower 6/8. So it was fun that it turned into this playful track that we could just kind of have some fun playing, and it was a lot of fun to play.
Whistle parts I was really like too. I like the whistle solo.
Right.
Cool. Yeah.
I remember working on the solo at the cottage, and then I was bouncing it off you, Brian. And the only thing I really remember about it is you said, I really like that bit where it goes dee 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 dee. And, ba, 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 da, ba. But man, it was. I remember it was. I was really just getting used to playing whistle. I'd been playing it before, but I hadn't really gotten really into it. I still wasn't completely fluent in playing any note that I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had a bit of a hard time getting used to just off the bat that that first bit. Anyway.
Yeah.
On a side note, I found one of those Susato whistles at my house. Must have ended up with me at one point. So I've been trying to play it over this quarantine time.
Yeah.
And you'd think it's like a recorder and it's easy to play, but it is not easy to play at all.
Not at all. Rose bought me a really nice D whistle from Argentina. That's just this gorgeous instrument. It's called a clover flute, and I thought I'd be able to pick it up. I can play one tune, and the tune is called "Splendid Isolation," so that's pretty appropriate. It wasn't planned. But I have a newfound respect for your whistle playing, Craig. It's a bit of a instrument.
Well, thank you.
So this is track 8. It's called "Follow."
Daydreams encircle our rotten days by the window and land in the palms of our hands. My mind has never been one for a slow ride, always delight in a sweet tide, slipping away if we can. A blanket of cold for a beacon of fire. Who knows if I'm wrong or I'm right if I follow? 3 tries, give them to me, I will need them. Climbing the thorns of a long stem, the petals will carry me home. Times and a strong yield. The food on our plates is a good meal, however the story unfolds. Oh, these lines keep changing. I'll follow the stars tonight, a blanket of cold for a beacon of fire. Who knows if I'm wrong or I'm right if I follow, if I follow. All these lines keep changing. We stay the stumbling through life's pages, and we can write them as we go. Stars tonight, a blanket of cold for a beacon of fire. Who
That was Follow, and we moved from that onto a song that we only played live a handful of times. I don't think we played it live very long. And this is a cool, creepy, weird piano-based song called Of a Murder, which Trevor wrote. Glenn, you said that you had kind of a specific memory of the writing process for this song.
Yeah, I'm not the process, like a sort of a snapshot during it. It was when we were at the Levels place, and you were on the grand piano by yourself in the living room, and you were noodling around with that thing at the beginning. You were actually working out the piano part at the beginning of the song. And there was a storm that was blowing in. And I don't know if you remember this, but I have a video they have these wind chimes outside. And I was filming the wind, blowing these wind chimes with the beginning of a Murder, playing playing that in the living room as this storm blew in. And then the rain just pounded down, and the video continued. But it was just, that's something that's really stuck in my head about that. It was sort of the soundtrack to the thunderstorm, which was really cool.
That was such
epic place to see a thunderstorm. The windows were 2 stories high, and you could see for miles out across the hills. Yeah. And the grand piano was right there in front of the window.
Yeah.
And that fireplace, there was like a 2-story like river rock fireplace that kind of wound up to the ceiling. It was amazing. Yeah. What a place.
Yeah, beautiful place, beautiful piano too. And one thing I really remember about working on this album was that there was a few songs between this one, White Squall, and Headlights 1 and 2, and Basket of the Blade. There was a few songs that were very piano based, and I didn't have a piano at home, and we were touring a lot back then. And so I just remember everywhere we went that had a piano, Trevor and I would wind up like hunkered around the piano trying to work through parts for songs because we knew that we had the studio booked and we were heading into the studio. But Trevor, you'd mentioned that this is one that we worked out at our friend Tom Schneider's place outside of Boston.
Yep, I do remember that one and White Squall, especially working on those two. The thing that I find interesting about this tune is how dark and creepy sounding it is, but it's all major chords. There are no minor chords in the song.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Well, it's almost true. There's very few anyways. In that one little drop down, like the music box part,
oh yeah, okay.
That might be the only spot where I hit an actual minor chord.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you're right. It's super creepy, but it's pretty much all major chords. I didn't really notice that.
Just a lot of chromatic movements. Yeah.
I think Bruce did a bunch more of his noise things too during this, and that kind of brought the creepy right from the beginning, where all those like the playing of the saw.
It's called drums, Glenn. All right.
But weren't you playing like a saw with a bow or something like that? There was.
I think there were saw blades involved at one point. I'm assuming those were yours. I don't really remember where we got them from.
Yes, they were saw blades. That's right. And I remember.
Did I ask you to bring them in, or?
I think you did. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's the one and only time I've ever requested saw blades at the studio. But yeah, I should do that again because they do have a very cool sort of kind of like a bell-like sound. But again, there's just something weird about it. That kind of like the metal tray we talked about earlier. It's a little bit left of center in an interesting way, and kind of has some of the same characteristics of if you were playing chimes, let's say, but they're not chimes, they're saw blades, so they just sound kind of weird and wrong in a cool way.
People trying to picture this themselves, by saw blades we mean circular saw blades, right?
Like, yeah, circular saw blades.
You had them hanging on strings or something, right? Like as though they were chimes, or I think one of them you actually had on a cymbal stand.
I think I tried to convince you guys to hold them for me. But I don't remember. I either had them suspended from strings or maybe on a cymbal stand or something. I didn't actually remember any of this until you guys started.
But the chains you use stand out too as well.
Chains, yeah.
We're dropping chains on like a metal plate or something like that.
Yeah.
I was just fucking with you guys, to be honest.
It's like the Jacob Marley moment of the album.
I just wanted to see, you know, how long I could pull this off for before one of you finally said, "Okay, like, come on."
The drums too.
The other really creepy sound, which is most evident right off the intro, is that matrixy wailing kind of metallic sound. And I'd never seen anybody do that before either. And if I recall, you basically just like held one of your cymbals and scraped the back of it with a stick. Is that how you got that sound?
Yeah, I did that, and I did a thing with a gong. This was back at Humber after when you guys were at the cottage. I did a thing with a gong so a gong is like, if you can picture just a giant cymbal. This one was about maybe, I don't know, 28, 30 inches. And you get the metal vibrating, and then I think you can sort of drag different things across it as it's vibrating, and you get this creepy, eerie sort of shimmering sound. And what Brian was talking about, where you take a drumstick and you kind of, if you apply a certain kind of pressure along a cymbal, you get this horrible kind of, sort of like someone dragging their nails across a chalkboard. But and then there's this other thing you can do with a big concert bass drum, where if you get a little bit of moisture on your thumb, you can do kind of a thumb roll, which that's maybe that kind of sort of eerie sort of whale sound you're thinking of, where,
oh really? Okay.
Yeah, you get a big drum head that's vibrating as you're kind of pushing your thumb across it.
Is this stuff that you learned to do, or is this just stuff that all drummers know how to do somehow?
I went to college, so yeah.
Well, that's cool.
No, I don't know. I've seen people do things over the years that I thought were cool, and I usually just try to store them away and hopefully find somewhere down the road where I can use it. As you guys said, sometimes I'll break into a groove or something and it's totally inappropriate, but other times it works really well, or it spurs on some other kind of thing that we chase and we end up somewhere else. But I just think it's important to try stuff like that. And I think for it to be successful, you have to be willing to, it's kind of being a door-to-door salesman, you have to be willing to have it just fail horribly most of the time. But it's worth it if, 1 out of 10 or 20 times you try it, you get this really interesting thing that
right.
all of a sudden lends this unique sound or feel to something. But
what's the saying? 1 in 100 girls will date you, but you have to ask all 100, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been putting that theory to the test personally. But, yeah.
And Craig, you mentioned that this is the first song on the record, I think, that your muted trumpet makes an appearance.
I think it's the first time for Enter the Haggis that the trumpet appears at all. But yes, it was muted, and we did have we had a guest trumpet player, Joe Stahl, who also played on this, and it was unmuted at that point. We brought it in unmuted, yeah. But all the creepy stuff was muted, so Harmon mute. A lot of fun.
This is cool. I like the song, and I come back to it and listen to it once in a while. It was another one of the ones that we did on the Bosendorfer grand piano out on that crazy stormy windy day. And this is called Of a Murder. I wanted to say we did mention that this was Bruce's first record with the band, but people might be interested to hear a little bit of the story of how we found Bruce and how he wound up joining the band in the first place. Bruce is an alumnus of Humber College in Toronto, which is the same college that both Mark and our previous drummer, James Campbell, attended. And I forget which Mark did one of you guys actually know Bruce? I think our friend Dave Schultz had suggested Bruce as a potential new drummer as well.
I mean, Bruce and I knew each other. Did we not play in ensembles together? Yeah, we did. I thought so. Yeah.
Lisa Martinelli or Shannon Gunn or
Right.
one of those.
Yeah. One of the vocal ensembles. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a funny thing because obviously, I mean, James had been in the band for almost 12 years and big shoes to fill. Very great player and great musician. And we set up auditions for whoever was going to be our new drummer. And if I recall correctly, there was one guy who who had been playing with the band Greenwich Mean Time, who Glenn knew for a very long time, Steph McAleer, who we had briefly talked to, and it turned out that just logistically it wasn't going to work for him. And so we never actually wound up jamming with him. And then the day that Bruce came to audition for us at a little rehearsal studio in Hamilton, we had booked either 2 or 3 auditions that day, and the first guy never showed up. And then Bruce showed up right on time, and he blew our minds and knew all the songs, and we never auditioned anybody else. So whoever that first guy was,
It's the last time I was on time too. But
yeah, right.
goes to show you, kids, you just got to make a good first impression.
What was it like for you, Bruce, coming into our circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always going to be an adjustment period when you join a band that has been together and doing it on the road and in the studio for, I guess, going on 10 years at that point. I think maybe James had been in the band for about 10 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And I didn't really know a lot about the band. I knew of the band because I knew Mark and James from school, and they were joining the band right around that time that we were at Humber together. And then you mentioned Dave Schultz, was a good friend of Trevor's growing up, and I had played in a band actually from Milton that Dave was in for years with some other mutual friends, and I didn't know Trevor at the time, but I think we may have even played like a battle of the bands at a high school in Milton once, and cross paths at that time. James would have been there too, and another mutual friend, Anthony, we had, who played on at least one or maybe a couple of your previous albums, like some tablas and other stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it was just, I think that's a common thing in music where you have these sort of paths that kind of cross and you know someone who knows someone. But you know, you guys were all great about welcoming me in, and one nice aspect of joining an established band is, at least initially, you don't have to really struggle to figure out how to fit in musically, because presumably, you know, the band has a catalog and a sound, and you kind of have to learn the songs. And if you learn the songs, that should go pretty smoothly. So I kind of saw that as an advantage, you know, having some time for us to get comfortable playing with each other before we actually started to try and write and record this album, for example. It wasn't a long time, but it makes a big difference having, you know, a good 6 months or so or 8 months or whatever it was to kind of play together. And yeah, and you know, the obviously there are some very devoted fans, and I know people were disappointed that James was leaving, because you know, they were all so fond of him. But at the same time, you know, everyone wished him well and was very welcoming and encouraging towards me. So that always makes it easier too.
That's cool. Yeah, and I do remember that the first song you played with us live was a song called Rolly, which Trevor had written, and we all kind of worked out together. And it was supposed to be on this record. And it was the first song we demoed for this record. And all along it was supposed to be on this album. And then by the time we finished recording all the songs for the album, it didn't fit anymore. So we didn't wind up putting it on. But that was the first song you played with us at Celtic Classic, which is pretty cool. It was a brand new song. The next track is one that I wrote. It's called The Hunter and the Phantom Limb. And once again, this is a song that ordinarily I have a really hard time writing lyrics. They don't come to me quickly. But once in a while, a song just kind of pours out. And I wrote this almost more like a poem. And the original idea that I had for this was like a Leonard Cohen-y sort of fingerstyle acoustic guitar kind of thing with the same melody. And it doesn't really have a chorus. It's kind of like a through composed thing. There's just a few verses kind of in a row. Our friend Megan Lovell of Larkin Poe lent her talents to this track on a really, really cool dobro track. The idea was we wanted this song to be really kind of heavy, riff rocky, kind of like Johnny Mooring was on the last record. But this album being much more organic and acoustic oriented, I wanted to keep it away from being big, heavy electric guitars, and I wanted the whole thing to be on acoustic instruments as though they were playing heavy riffs. There's a band in the, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s called Days of the New. Does anybody remember that band?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They had one song that was a riff rock song all on acoustic guitars, and it was this really huge sounding acoustic, and I think I was kind of thinking of that sort of sound when we approached the recording of this. Although, ironically, when it came to mixing, we felt like the dobro was just a little too beautiful and sensitive because she's such a great player. And so we went back to Tim Abraham. I went to the Hive and brought the dobro tracks to Tim, and he ran them out through electric guitar amplifiers and distorted them to make them sound heavier and louder. So, sometimes the best laid plans go awry. Does anybody have any kind of specific memories about this song, about recording it or working on it or anything?
I don't think I played or sang anything on it.
Really?
Unless I played that octave mandolin.
There might be an octave mandolin in there. I don't remember.
No, I always liked it. I really liked particularly like the drums on it. Seemed like more of a John Bonham thing. I feel like overall had that kind of Zeppelin, kind of more folky leaning Zeppelin stuff. Feel to it. I really like this track. I think it's really cool. I'm just not really sure I contributed anything to it. So
good vibe.
I think it was one of the ones. I think it was the one that was sort of the question mark on the record as to whether it would make the cut or not. It was kind of that one that if it didn't pull together, we weren't really sure how it was going to pull together, and if it didn't, then it was probably going to get cut. But I think then Megan came in with that with the dobro, and the thing started to come together and make sense.
I'd love to play it live, but it's just without that dobro, it's such an important part of the sound of the song, I feel like.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a challenge sometimes when you're in a band and you're in the recording studio. Sometimes you'll have ideas or you'll hear sounds that you want in a recording, and you won't expect that sound to dominate the character of the song as much as it does. And then when it does, without that character, it's really hard to we've got a bunch of songs in our catalog that are like that, where it's like either it's an instrument or a sound or something that we did on the record, and anytime we try and play it live without that sound, we just feel the lack so much that we don't get excited about playing it. So I don't know, maybe we'll take it back to being a fingerstyle Leonard Cohen song, and we'll do it on our
maybe Craig can add dobro to his instrument.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Craig, you got to learn dobro.
Oh, you got it. Just let me know what you want.
All right, we'll get into it. This one's called The Hunter and the Phantom Limb.
Today I walked out in the snow, so peaceful on the sleeping lawn. It filled my shoes and chilled my bones. You weren't there and I moved on. You weren't there and I moved on. The city streets were full of noise. Hammers, faces flushed with heat. The cars and windows all in lines. Couldn't see you in those streets. Couldn't see you in those streets. Your graveyard glistening, the grass of morning fresh and wet. The birds were screaming, come and see. I walked away, you weren't there yet. I walked away, you weren't there yet. The woods were walls of shadows thick, with fancier limbs on hardened ground. The path was overgrown and lost. Fallen leaves were all I found. Fallen leaves were all I found. The path was overgrown and lost. Fallen leaves were all I found. Fallen leaves were all I found. Check the hospitals and bars. I read the papers every day. Though I know you're still at large, they all say you've gone away. They all say you've gone away. At home I sit and feel the ache of walks alone in crowds of pairs. Though the search is hard, I know one day I'll look and you'll be there. One day I'll look and you'll be there. Though the search is hard, I know one day I'll look and you'll be there. Yeah, one day you'll be there.
The Hunter and the Phantom Limb. And the next track is a fun kind of New Orleans jazzy sort of dance tune, which Trevor wrote, called Let Me Go. Trevor, do you want to give a bit of background on this one?
Yeah, I don't remember where the melodies came from, but lyrically, it was around the time where Craig's mom passed away. And we had some conversations about that. I mean, Craig and I have been roommates for many years on the road, so we're going to talk about that kind of life things anyway. So we had a bunch of talks about that, and Craig was able to sort of share some perspective on that, which influenced the lyrics, and also Rebecca and Megan Lovell. We were just talking about Megan playing on Hunter and the Phantom Limb. And her dad was a doctor who worked in palliative care, and just talking about, at the end of your life, being able to, let go of someone when the time is right, instead of just, trying to keep people alive as long as possible, trying to enjoy the life that we have as much as best we can. So it was some it goes back to the Irish thing, like a song like One Last Drink, where it's the kind of an upbeat, fun, melodic idea with some heavier lyrics. That's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, and Craig, this is another one that you busted out the trumpet for. You and Joe Stahl both, and you kind of like traded eights on the end of the song.
The whole thing with the trumpet was it was really it was kind of almost accidental. I was living in Stratford, actually at Trevor's place for a bit, and I had a trumpet down in the basement, and I remember getting the stuff together. We're heading up to Glenn's brother's cottage, and I was thinking, what am I going to bring? Well, I've got my pipes, I've got my whistles, I've got the harmonicas. What else do you think I might need? And then just out the corner of my eye, I see the trumpet case, and I thought, should I bring that? And thought, oh, why the heck not? I'll bring it. Who knows? Might get a tone here or there.
I think you've got a didgeridoo as well.
Yeah.
We had the crazy
didgeridoo.
Saxophone, if I recall, too.
What's that?
I think there was a saxophone as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
For a little bit. I don't know if I took it up there. No, I don't think. I think it was a little bit later, Glenn, wasn't it?
Could be.
There was a sax at the studio in Cornwall.
You're
We
right.
had at least one accordion as well at the studio, because I played accordion on a couple of tracks. There was a crazy collection of instruments up there. It was kind of fun.
No, you're right. You're right, Glenn. It was there. Yeah. Anyway, I ended up just grabbing that trumpet, putting it in the van, and heading up. And the rest is history. It stayed.
You didn't play the didgeridoo on anything, though. I'm looking at the track list, and I don't think it actually made the cut in any of these songs.
No, I don't believe so. Unless it's in there in some hidden fashion. All I remember is trying to, really worrying about what was I going to play on it, how was the solo going to turn out, and whatever. And I remember I went in there. I think I was in the couch booth, and I remember playing that little solo, and it's a very short solo. And I remember just doing it once, and Glenn going, "Yep, okay, that's great, got it." I was like, "What? What do you mean? This is going to take all day." I think I convinced you to let me try it one more time, and out of that, it ended up being just fine. It doesn't have a great range. It's not a complicated solo, but I was very happy to have it on there.
That's great.
That's a hard instrument to pick up after not. Craig, for those who don't know, Craig studied trumpet in college, university, and but he hadn't played it for a long time, and that's rough on the lips to pick up the trumpet and then have to learn a solo for an album in fairly short order. So,
yeah,
that's cool.
You couldn't ask for a more diligent learner, because that's actually exactly how it happened, Craig. And I think you discount your playing quite a bit, but you nailed it. But all that practice paid off, or something.
Thanks, man.
Bruce, do you want to talk about the drum part for this a little bit? It's I remember you fiddling with your toms a lot and like laying sheets over them and trying to kind of get that tubby sort of sound.
Yeah, I think at that very same Value Village thrift store, I had found some tea towels. So this would be sort of a Ringo kind of thing, the way he used to lay tea towels over top of his drums. And actually, I have them right here. Or something I was.
You got everything, man.
Is there anything more British than Ringo laying tea towels across his drums?
Here's one I made earlier. No, yeah, so you just lay these over top, gets like a muffled sound. I found these pillowcases too, which have like a animal print sort of tribal pattern, which I thought was a little on the nose, but kind of cool to lay over top of some drums and stuff. So it's just kind of like a muted sort of sound. Sometimes I kind of think it's similar to tone to other like a Boron or something like that has like kind of a just more of a skin sound to it, as opposed to like the attack and impact of a stick hitting a drum. So yeah, and I think I have some jingle sticks and stuff like that, and it's kind of like a New Orleans meets Bo Diddley meets,
Sure.
the Irish Rovers.
Wow.
That's what I always got out of it. Yeah. It's funny. I remember this song being one that, so people probably don't realize this. Our friend Zach McNees mixed this album, everything except for the Flood. He mixed every other song. The reason the Flood was mixed by somebody else is that we actually had the entire record mixed by someone else first. And for various reasons, we just weren't really happy with the way the mixes were coming across. But I think this song was kind of the catalyst, because I remember him sending this mix out, and Bruce, you were just so dissatisfied with what he had done to your drums and the sound of the drums in this song. But that's when we basically pulled the plug, and having already paid him to mix the whole record, thanks to all of your kind donations in our crowdfunding campaign, we had enough left over that we could call Zach at the 11th hour and say, like, hey man, we need this album remixed, and he did a great job for us. Mark, what about the bass part for this one?
Again, I was just going off of, as a bass player, usually you're going off kind of what the drummer's doing, unless you're doing like a more of a lead riffy kind of thing, and they might try to play off you. But I tend to just kind of see where a drummer is going with their part, and then try to work mine in. Typically, rhythmically figuring out what the kick drum's doing, stuff like that. But knowing this kind of style, or at least having heard it a little bit, the New Orleans thing, I was just trying to copy that as best as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make it authentic as I could myself.
That's cool. There's a Hammond organ sound in this track too. It's the only one on the record, and it's entirely fake. It was just my little Nord module that I had. And Nord, their keyboards, they have a rotary simulator. We talked in the last stream about like what rotary speakers are, but there's a rotary simulator, and you can spool it up and down, and you can kind of play it, and the keyboard itself feels a lot like a Hammond organ. So I think this is the only time that I ever, because we were up at the cottage, we didn't have access to something like a Hammond organ with a Leslie cabinet, and so we actually just played the fake one. And I think when I recorded it, we were still in the back of our heads thinking maybe at some point we would, in the next few weeks, find a real one and redo it, but then we never did. And I think it actually sounds pretty good. It's a pretty cool sound. So, the testament to Glenn's engineering skills, making it even sound good.
Plug it in.
So this is kind of a dance tune. This is called "Let Me Go."
When the warm wind blows to carry my bones, let me go, let me go, let me go. When the ravens surround me like moss on the stone, let me go, let me go, let me go. I will walk that road with my head held high as my last sweet sunset fades. When the warm wind blows to carry my bones, let me go, let me go, let me go. Put my box of pine into the fire, let me go, let me go, let me go. Hear the crackle and spit, see the black ashes fly. Let me go, let me go, let me go. I will walk that road with my head held high as my life been places that I never thought I would know. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Happy I found you, my true love, my all. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Our memories will dance like the leaves in the fall. Let me go, let me go, let me go. I will walk that road with my head held high as my last sweet sunset fades. I'm so happy I found you, my true love, my all. Let me go, let me go, let me go. And we will live, live, live till we die. Yes, we will live, live, live till we die. We will live, live, live till we die. Till we die. Till we die.
And that was Let Me Go from our album Whitelake. We moved from Let Me Go to the final song on Whitelake, and it's the one song on the album that we didn't actually write, although we very much wish that we had. And it's a song that we've ended a lot of concerts with, and we've played at a lot of shows since then. And it's a song written by a Canadian songwriting legend named Stan Rogers. The song is called White Squall. We decided to learn a Stan Rogers song because we'd been invited to play at the Stan Rogers Folk Festival in Canso, Nova Scotia. And we felt like it was sort of our duty to have at least one Stan Rogers song in our arsenal when we went to the festival. And so Trevor was a big Stan Rogers fan, and he pulled this one out and played it for us. And we put together what we thought was kind of like a Blue Rodeo meets Arcade Fire kind of arrangement for it. But one of the most fun parts of recording White Squall for us up at the cottage was that as part of our fundraising, our crowdfund campaign, we had made available to people the opportunity to come and perform on the album. And not a lot of people took us up on it, but one wonderful person who did is a woman from Michigan named Kelly Elvin, who has joined us here tonight to tell us a bit about the experience from her perspective, because she'd never really met any of us, except maybe briefly on Kayamo. So hi, Kelly. Thanks for being here with us.
Hi, glad to be here. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because we certainly heard you all play on Kayamo, and of course you were a big hit with everybody. And so it was, my birthday was coming up in April, and my husband, Matt, who is a really good gift giver, like he's one of those people who always comes up with something cool and creative and interesting. And he was like, well, I saw that, Enter the Haggis had this fan opportunity. And so he got it for me, but he didn't tell me. So it was a surprise. Yeah. So I had no idea. And he said, basically, we're going away for the weekend, pack some warm clothes, pack enough for a couple days. And that was it. Like we flew into we flew partway and then drove the rest of the way. And so I still didn't have any idea. And finally at some point I was like, are we going to Canada? Like what is happening?
So you had your passport with you at least. He did tell you to bring your or maybe he brought your passport for you?
He brought it. Yeah. I mean, he took the whole thing was like a complete secret. And I honestly had no idea. And how would you even guess that? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So the most memorable part of the journey up there was the last like hour or so where we were like, well, this can't be right. And also, will we be murdered? Like every place we passed to stay was, basically like Fred's Murder Drive-In. And so we became increasingly anxious as the roads got smaller and smaller and the houses got farther and farther apart. I believe the last part of the journey we were on what we thought was perhaps a logging road. So we finally find the cabin and we pull in and like, okay, so we've just been driving all day and we've, it's been this long day of traveling and now we're going to be like, hi, we're here. Hi, strangers. Let's sing together.
So at what point did he tell you what it was that you were in for? When did you know what the destination was and what was going to be expected of you?
I think when we got close to the border to Canada, he said, we're going to Canada and this is what we're doing. And I was like, what now? Like, what? So, I mean, I thought it was an amazing gift. He actually said to me, I'm going to tell you what it is. This is either going to be the best gift you've ever gotten or the worst. So, it was obviously a little bit intimidating walking in and, also thinking about it from your perspective, like here comes this random person and you're just hoping like that some rudimentarily musical sounds will come out of her. Right? Like it's a big deal. Like this is your life. This is your album. And, you've done this thing and now you're like, hopefully we haven't made a horrible mistake. And right. So
it's funny, we've done it for most of our albums since then. We've had the opportunity during the crowdfunding for people to be a part of the album. And for more recent albums, I'm not going to say that we wrote to accommodate those parts, but we were way more cognizant of it during the recording process of, okay, like this song is really going to lead itself to some like gang vocals and hand claps and foot stomps or whatever. And so it would always kind of be in the back of our mind that we could get people in and sort of accommodate them that way. But for Whitelake, I don't really think that we had that in our heads. We got super lucky because obviously you're a great singer and you can carry a tune and we didn't have to strap the share machine on you and just auto-tune every note.
Set the bar pretty high for the next folks on the albums to come. Yeah.
Well, I think part of that was honestly you all made us feel so comfortable and welcome, and so like that awkwardness that made sense was dissipated pretty quickly. And I feel like Trevor particularly, I feel like you gave me like your sort of inspired my singing the way you were, I kind of tried to mimic what you were doing and that felt helpful. Glenn, you were
never do that.
I mean, just sort of like, cause you sing like very confidently, you just go right into it. And so I was like, well, I just have to do what Trevor's doing and I just have to pretend and fake it till you make it kind of thing. And then Glenn was so kind to me because I was really like, God, I'm going to do something. And he's going to be like, no, that's wrong. And you were just like, I remember one time the first part, maybe people don't realize this is at Glenn's brother's cabin, right? So part of it was recorded where they were like, so just go behind this couch. The couch is standing on an end, like go into this corner where this couch is. And then I remember the part, I was singing the harmony part and I finished singing. There's just this moment of silence and Glenn goes, that was great. Now, can you do it a third down? I was so wound up that I just went up a third, just not even thinking about it and just sang through the whole thing. And I was like, something's vaguely wrong, but, and then he was so kind about it. And so that really helped, having that voice in my ear, but just being very patient was really helped a lot.
Oh.
I thought to add to that too, I thought it was great having Glenn produce my vocals and just throughout that whole album too. And talking about confidence when you're singing, it is really important to have the support of people around you, especially in the studio space. And I thought Glenn did a great job of that sort of coaching and going through, looking at lines, line by line, and trying to get you into the headspace of what the song was about.
Yeah. So he was nice to you as well?
It was, yeah. Yeah, he, I was off by a third, and I'm sure I was many times.
Yeah.
Didn't rub my nose in it. Yeah.
It was actually, I remember at one point we got to actually sort of look over Glenn's shoulder while you were doing all of the things with the board. And so that was really cool to just see the process of how all those different musical and vocal lines came together and how you were putting them and building a song from them. That was really interesting behind the scenes look at that.
Yeah. Kelly, had you ever done anything like that? Had you ever sang in a studio?
Not in a studio, no. I was, so my mom was a singer when she was young, like a bar singer, played accordion in a band.
Nice.
And sang. And then I was in a singing group in college, but nothing like super fancy. So no, this whole studio thing was just very singing with headphones on and singing into a mic. That was a whole new thing.
Wow. And you and Matt, I don't remember if in the description we offered accommodations or not, but you guys brought your own.
We were specifically, I believe, specific instructions were provide your own accommodations. Due to the aforementioned murder hotels in the area, we opted for camping. So, and then the funny part was, we were like, well, we schlepped all this camping stuff. I guess we must have driven the whole way because we did bring the camping stuff with us. So I guess we didn't fly at all. We just drove from Michigan, which makes sense. I was like, well, I think after the day was done, you guys were like, well, you're clearly not insane people. And if you want to stay in the cabin, you can. And I was like, well, we brought this tent like all the way from Michigan and we're setting it up and we're doing the tent thing.
I remember that argument. I remember talking to both you and Matt and trying to convince you to come into the cabin, and you were hell-bent on staying in that tent. And I think it rained the first night too.
Poured.
Yeah.
Poured.
And it was cold. This was like April in Canada,
Yeah, it was definitely chilly. Like we wore all our clothes to bed for sure and had all our, our sleeping bags bundled up and everything. And I remember distinctly we got all nestled in and settled in, and like we were hearing the loons, which was really amazing. And literally 15 minutes in, I'm like, I gotta pee. And I was too horrified to go back in the house. I'm like, those guys are all like, they're out. They're like, we've got the house, the cabin to ourselves now. The cottage is ours. And so I was like, well, I can't go inside. So I was like, just go outside. It'll be fine. I mean, I'm a country girl. I can handle it. But it was like being out in the dark next to the lake with the loons calling behind a tree peeing. So
I think there's a bit of snow actually. I think on the ground a little bit. Yeah.
It was March, I think, because there was still ice around the edges of the lake.
I think when we first pulled in, wasn't the lake still the ice hadn't gone out yet?
Not completely anyway.
When we first got there, there was still ice.
Well, you're hardcore, Kelly, and it really did make a huge difference on that track, having your voice specifically, but a female voice more generally, to just kind of fill out the sound and not make it just sound like a bunch of dudes yelling at a microphone. So thanks for taking the chance and risking it all and driving to a cottage in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of guys you'd never met to sing for us, because it made a huge difference. And it's been a lot of fun having you on stage with us at shows in Michigan since, and it's fun to have gotten to know you and Matt and become friends with you guys. So thanks for being part of it.
It's honestly been, it's interesting because that's one thing that's actually had such a big ripple effect in our lives, because not only do we get to know all of you, and which has been really wonderful, and obviously singing with you on stage. I mean, what a thrill. And you have always been so kind and generous. And I always feel like, you should never feel obligated about that, but it is so kind and lovely and so much fun. But think of all the people that we've met. Like there are people in our lives today that we would have never met if we hadn't become friends with you and gone to Ireland with you. And like there's all these people in our lives now that are precious to us because of Enter the Haggis. So it's kind of amazing how that one event, that one little trip, just had all these ripple effects where we've just got these incredible people in our lives that we love so dearly because of your band.
Well, it's amazing to hear, and it's one of the reasons that doing what we do for a living is so much fun and so rewarding for us, is getting to hear those kinds of connections get made. So, does anybody have any final anecdotes while Kelly's still here with us? Anybody have any? I don't remember exactly who was at the cottage at the time. I know I was. Trevor was. Craig, were you there? You were there too?
Yes, I was. I was most of the time was sequestered away trying to write trumpet parts for, Oh, God.
Is that your glockenspiel?
Yeah, no. I got to turn this thing off. Yeah, I was around, but yeah, I kept a little bit more out of the way when Kelly was doing your vocals, because I had to write words for Samaustavi and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you dropping into our conversation tonight, Kelly, and we hope that you'll hang out in the chat and say hi to people and sort of be a part of the party tonight. So thanks for joining us, and it was really nice to talk to you again and see your face again. Hope you're staying safe up there in Michigan and staying healthy.
Give our best to Matt.
Yeah.
Will do. Thanks. Great to see everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.
Well, it's just my luck to have to watch, with nothing left to do but to watch the deadly water glide as we roll north to the Sioux. I wonder when they'll turn again and pitch us to the rail, whirl off one more youngster in the gale. The kid was so damn eager, it was all so big and new. Never had to tell him twice or find him work to do. Evenings on the mess deck, he was always first to sing, show us pictures of the girl he'd wed in spring. But I told that kid 100 times, don't take the lakes for granted. They go from calm to 100 knots, so fast they seem enchanted. But tonight a red-eyed Wyerton girl lies staring at the wall, and her lover's gone into a white squall. It's a thing that us old-timers know. In a sultry summer calm, there comes a blow from nowhere, and it goes off like a bomb. And a 15,000-tonner can be thrown upon her beam, while the gale takes all before it with a scream. The kid was on the hatches, lying staring at the sky. From where I stood, I swear I could see tears fall from his eyes. So I hadn't the heart to tell him that he should be on the line, even on a night so warm and fine. But I told that kid 100 times, don't take the lakes for granted. They go from calm to 100 knots, so fast they seem enchanted. But tonight a red-eyed Wyerton girl lies staring at the wall, and her lover's gone into a white squall. And I could feel her keeling over with the fury of the blow, and I watched the rail go under them, so terrible and slow. Then like some great dog she shook herself and roared upright again. Far overside I heard him call my name, but I told that kid 100 times, fast they seem enchanted. But tonight a red-eyed white girl lies staring at the wall, and her lover's gone into a white squall. And her lover's gone into a white squall.
And that was White Squall, and with it, that was Whitelake. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight, guys. We had a great time. It was fun hearing some perspectives from some outside people. Thanks to Kelly Alvin for joining us once again, and thanks to our man, Glenn Forrester, who was the producer and engineer and has been manning the front of house soundboard for us for how long now? 12 years?
Yeah, it's at least that.
At
Something
least
like
that.
that.
Yeah,
Crazy.
because that's crazy. But we
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks for having
you.
us. It's really
That's
cool.
not an outside perspective. This is
Yeah, not anymore.
It was a long time ago now, but it was, for me, it felt like an early part of our chapter together, and one that I look back on fondly. So it's really cool to kind of be able to go back tonight and do that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
awesome. Fun. Thanks.
Maybe we'll get you involved with some of the future ones too, because you've been sort of a part of the story ever since. And thanks to Bruce McCarthy for jumping on this one, because it was his first record with the band, and it's fun to listen to these albums sequentially and hear sort of the shift musically that happened between the previous album and this one. And Bruce, you were a big part of that. So it's very cool. So thanks to everybody for joining us. 2 weeks from now, we will be going over The Modest Revolution, which came out in 2013. If you feel so inclined and you want to throw us some money to the tip jar, go to enterthehaggis.com/tipjar. Thanks for sharing our streams and getting everybody over here on YouTube to watch us. And we look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And the wind disappeared and you can't go back, but you rescued your heart from the cinders and wreckage of one bloody final crash. Oh, you knew there was something, a bright little beacon, a kink in the dark. Now you walk with intention, a smile and a sword in your arms. Trust your eyes, they will follow the light. It's a new tragic story. Trust your heart, it will swallow the dark. It's a mecca of heartache and doom. You can't trust the news. Can't trust the news. Oh, the dark midnight runways as still as the lake of your younger years. When the sunshine was brighter, the laughing was lighter. You never gave in to your fears. Oh, you could call it a waste, a disaster, a chase for the ghost of love. But you spat out the skin and the seeds and the dirt on your tongue. Trust your eyes, they will follow the light. It's a new tragic story. Trust your heart, it will swallow the dark. It's a mecca of heartache and doom. You can't trust the news. Can't trust the news. It's a new tragic story. Trust